Not all hauntings live in grand halls or abandoned mills. Some live much closer to home, behind thin walls, under worn floorboards, and in the places where ordinary people live, worked, and struggle. Because in Manchester, the working class didn't just build the city, they filled it with stories. Stories of things that moved in the night, of voices with no sources, and of presences that refused to leave. Tonight, we step into terraced houses, narrow streets, and lives long gone. This is Poltergeists and Working Class Legends on Mysterious Law UK.
Welcome to Mysterious Lore. The Gorton Poltergeist.
In 1990, a Gorton family reported something strange, not outside, but inside their home. It started small, knocking sounds, objects slightly out of place, easy to ignore. At first, but then it changed. The noises got louder, more frequent, harder to explain. Bangings on the wall, footsteps upstairs when there was no one around. Eventually, doors began to move, opening, closing. Eventually, doors began to open and close on their own. Furniture shifted, objects were thrown, not dropped, literally thrown across the room. The family became convinced they were not alone. Like many poltergeist cases, the activity seemed to centre around one person, a young member of the family. People came to investigate, neighbours, curious onlookers, even local media. Some claim they heard the ghost themselves, the knocking, the movement, but no one could prove what the cause was. There was no intruder, there was no clear explanation. Eventually, the story faded. The activity stopped, or at least it stopped being reported. But like most cases like this, it was never fully explained. That's what makes it so unsettling, because it just wasn't just a story, it was an experience witnessed by many, and for the people inside that house, it was real.
The Bradford Road Knocker.
So in East Manchester, along Bradford Road, rows of terraced housing once stood, packed tightly, family after family. In one stretch, residents began reporting the same thing. A knock on the door 3 times in total, always the same pattern, 3 slow knocks. When they answered, no one was there. At first, it was dismissed. Kids playing knock-a-door run and other tricks. Neighbours joking about. But it kept happening. Night after night. At the same time, the same rhythm. And then someone opened the door before the knocking had finished. Nothing outside, but behind them, another knock from inside the house.
The Firehouse Lodger.
Near Great Ancoat Street, there once stood a row of boarding houses. Serving mill workers and labourers used to live in there. In one of them, a fire broke out in the early 1900s. Small at first, containable, but one lodger never made it out. They said he was last seen trying to gather his belongings instead of running. After the house was rebuilt, people moved back in. But something wasn't quite right. Rooms felt warmer than they should, even in the middle of winter. At night, tenants reported hearing movement in the upstairs room that had burned. There were slow footsteps and the sound of something being dragged. Like someone still trying to carry everything they owned out of a fire that ended long ago.
The Wash House Shadow.
Before indoor plumbing, shared washing houses were part of daily life of Manchester. Pieces of routine conversations and exhaustion. In one such wash house in Manchester, workers spoke of a shadow. Not a person, not quite a shape, just something standing at the far end of the room. Always watching, never moving, until one night it did. A woman claimed it crossed the room, slowly, deliberately, and stopped right behind her. She never returned to the wash house, and eventually neither did anyone else. The building was abandoned, but the story stayed with the community.
The Cross Street Poltergeist.
Long before modern ghost stories, Manchester had its own unexplained disturbances. In 1835, reports emerged from a property near the city centre Witnesses described loud, unexplained noises, footsteps in empty rooms, and objects being disturbed. Crowds gathered. Some attempted to catch whatever was causing it. But nothing was ever seen. Newspapers at the time documented the events, turning the story into one of Manchester's earliest recorded hauntings. A poltergeist, before the word was widely used. Wait, stop.
Fact or folklore?
So, what's really happening in these homes? Poltergeist activity is often linked not to places but to people. Stress, grief, emotional strain, all these things that were common in working class Manchester. Psychologists suggest these experiences could be manifestations of the human mind under pressure. Old houses also shift, pipes expand, wood creaks. Sounds travel in ways we don't fully understand or notice until we're alone. And yet, some events don't fit neatly into explanation. Objects moving, multiple witnesses, stories that match decades apart. So again, we're left with the same question. Is it all in the mind? Or is something still sharing these spaces with us? The people in Manchester don't have much, but they had stories. Stories to explain the unexplainable, to cope with the loss, to make sense of the things that didn't make sense at all. And whether you believe them or not, those stories still live on, in the walls, in the streets, and in the silence between everyday life. Next time, we leave the street behind and step into something older. Something darker. Boggarts, beasts, and ancient magic. Thank you for watching this video. If you like what you've seen, give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing. If you've been to any of these places and have your own experiences, or there's somewhere that you'd like us to go and tell a story of, leave it in the comments and we can have a look at it. Thank you.